The end of the last decade saw a huge rise in the creation and exhibition of performance art, as well as major museum retrospectives and new work from the likes of Marina Abramovich and Yvonne Rainer. A whole new generation of artists is turning towards performance. And while artists explore theatricality, many theatre companies such as Punch Drunk and Forced Entertainment are making theatre that verges on installation and visual art. Performance art is now well established in New York. The last edition of Performer, the biennial of performance art that is held there, was the biggest yet. One of the pieces commissioned for Performer by Keren Cytter and her dance company Die Now premiered at London's Tate Modern at the end of last year. The curator of that work was Kathleen Noble, and we're going to talk to me about how a major institution approaches performance art today.
Working with Keren was a really brilliant experience. It was the first time she'd ever really done something like that, because she normally works in film and video. So I think it was a massive departure for her, and it was pretty brave of her to take on the language of choreography and film, and she was working with a lighting designer, which she'd never done before, to create this kind of, it was almost like a total work of art, rather than, you know, a very kind of specific medium that she's used to, it was exciting. It was first actually commissioned by If I Can't Dance, I Don't Want to Be Part of Your Revolution. She worked with a group of actors and artists called Die Now. They worked together for a couple of months in the summer last year, every single day in a studio to choreograph all the different elements of the piece. And it was based upon a script that Keren wrote.
It all started a year ago. I transformed into a woman. Before I died, I looked like the dancer behind me.
The story of the play, if you can call it a play, it uses theatre and film and choreography, is based upon the idea that John Webber and Linda Schultz, the two main protagonists, wake up one morning to find that their sex has radically changed, which in turn kind of has a domino effect on the way they act, the way other people treat them, and the kind of, the way they behave. I guess to me, the piece is really very much about, it's Keren acting as an anthropologist in a way, because she kind of pulls at strands of behaviour in everyday life. I don't know, such as going to the supermarket, there's a move where it's like beep, beep. I think it's her pulling at everyday behaviour, and then kind of also she's dealing with ideas of aspiration, of where you want to be and where you might end up being.
Do you want to work in the supermarket for the rest of your life? Or do you want to be a graphic designer? Yes or no?
So were there particular challenges for Tate putting on a major performance like that?
Before Tate Modern opened, I guess it hadn't really had such a history of putting on performances. So the whole institution set up to put on an exhibition of permanent objects. So when you come to working with an artist like Keren, you kind of start from scratch with this project that seems slightly insane. There's no space to put it in. We don't have a theatre, we don't have lighting, and there's no infrastructure in the way the building works. I mean, these are really practical things. But, you know, bringing together a team of people who can actually put that on, often, I don't know, the number of projects I've ended up in the Turbine Hall in the middle of the night rehearsing, because you can't rehearse during opening hours, so you're there at 3 a.m. doing something slightly insane, hoping that you can go home soon. So I think in a very, very practical sense, the institution isn't really set up to, you know, make that kind of live project happen. But often, I guess often the projects end up being more interesting or end up being more the artist's vision, because you're not, with an exhibition, you know, you're placing things in a space and it's a very much defined space. Whereas if you're creating something from nothing, you often end up with something that, you know, something really, really unexpected, where all sorts of different things bump up against each other.
Huge.
And you knew that with the right amount of acting, the rest of the characters will move to the sides and clear his way to the top of the pyramid, where he always wanted to be.
What are you doing? I'm every woman.
Shit. Me too.
Do you think it's almost fashionable to be working in performance art?
There's a history, I think, throughout the 20th century, there's a history of artists working in performance art, from really early constructivist theatre pieces, Bauhaus ballets, I don't know, through the 60s in New York, through to, yeah, almost in every chapter of art in the 20th century, I think people were working in performance. But I think it's become institutionally fashionable to put a performance programme on. I mean, Tate's been doing it for nearly 10 years now, but recently MoMA's started doing one, the Whitney does something called Whitney Live. I mean, worldwide it's very much become, we need to put this kind of practice within the museum. So I don't think it's that artists have changed their practice so much. I do think artists very much like working in performance because it's an area they feel that they can take more risks in, I think, and it's also an area that often they can collaborate in more. So I don't think it's a kind of fashion that artists are thinking, oh, great, I'll do a performance because, you know, this is what people want. I think it's very much whether it suits the idea they're working with.
Do you think it can be related to following a period of kind of economic excess and almost artists kind of making work that's less easily bought and sold?
I mean, many people ask that question in that obviously performances are ephemeral, they're not object-based, it's not to do with commodity. And I guess in the 1960s, again, I think there was, you know, the kind of economic situation then wasn't so good. But I don't think today the way artists work with performance as a medium is born out of an economic crisis. I think people were working in that before, and just because something is an ephemeral gesture doesn't mean it can't be bought and sold still. I mean, you know, Roman Ondak sells his work, you know, there's a piece in the Tate collection, he will sell it as a set of instructions.
So having come back from performing in New York recently, how do you feel like London compares to New York when it comes to performance art?
Performer does a really amazing job of rallying together a huge number of artists, curators, venues across the entire city. So it's a great thing to go to because you do see almost the whole range of what performance can be, from very historical things to music to, you know, very ephemeral moments. I guess in relation to London, we don't have that type of performance biennale or kind of thing where all the energy comes together at once. But I think Tate's really pioneered a programme over the last 6 or 7 years that has tried to look at performance in a way that moves forward from the kind of typical history that looks at body art or looks at certain moments where performance has to very much be this thing where the artist is in the work and it's very much about the physicality of that. I guess we've tried to look at performance as interdisciplinary practice through historical projects and through contemporary projects and commission new work and just actually, I guess, collaborate a lot more with artists. The really great thing about London is the number of small spaces there are that kind of give artists the freedom to experiment in different ways. I mean, Gasworks, the Chisenhell, the showroom, all of those spaces. I think it's about giving an artist a place where they can just think through an idea, whether that's performance or whether that's, you know, a live work. I think it's giving people the freedom to experiment with those things.